Did I reincarnate after jumping off a building in despair at the engagement banquet? I was dressed in a red gown, looking elegant and poised. The next second, the sweet love video playing on the big screen suddenly changed. The affectionate boyfriend I thought I had already changed his heart. My parents weren't even my biological parents either. Everything was fake. So what was real? In the depths of grief, I threw away the engagement ring and angrily punched the scumbag. I'm not getting married, damn it. I had a dream. In the dream, I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with my own sister. Heartbroken, I went to a bar to drown my sorrows, but the more I drank, the sadder I got. After coming out of the bar late at night, I walked dazedly into a small alley and was abducted by a few hooligans who were following me. They took me to an abandoned warehouse where I spent the longest and most agonizing days of my life. Days later, I was rescued by the police. My mother hugged me and cried uncontrollably while my father smoked with his head down in silence. This made my already numb heart feel a little warmth. Fortunately, my family still loved me. I just didn't expect that even this family affection was fake. After persuading me to agree not to make a big fuss and not to call the police, they threw me abroad to fend for myself on the grounds that I had disgraced the Grace family. But when I was in unbearable pain, they held a grand wedding for my sister and my former fiancé. I saw the wedding video. It was sent to me by my good sister Olivia herself. The scene was decorated dreamily and luxuriously. The fresh flowers airlifted from abroad filled the entire wedding venue. They were her favorite colors, pink and blue. She and Mara smiled at each other among the falling flowers and kissed passionately. The groom was tall and handsome and the bride was petite and gorgeous. Even the master of ceremonies couldn't help exclaiming, "What a lovely couple." Yes. I closed my eyes. What a lovely couple indeed, a asterisk and a dog together forever. The video also had a caption, and it was these words that drove me to the edge of despair. You were an unwanted child from the start. Your biological parents abandoned you, and it was my parents who picked you up from the garbage dump. So no one loves you. If I were you, I wouldn't have the face to continue living in this world. At that time, I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and my emotions were extremely fragile. The double blow of the video and the truth was too much for me to bear, and my already faltering will to live immediately collapsed. I no longer tried to survive, but I didn't want to let them have an easy time either. I used my last money to buy a plane ticket back to the city. In the middle of the night, I sneaked past the security patrol and secretly climbed to the top floor of the Grace Group building. Taking advantage of the darkness, I hung the pre-prepared banner from the top floor and sat on the rooftop to watch the sunrise for the last time. The sun never stops for anyone. It arrives as promised, shining brightly. At the busiest time at the Grace Group, people were coming and going to work or just passing by. I smiled and took a step. I was free. The dream ended. For a moment, I couldn't tell whether this was reality or a dream. I didn't know if it was really just a dream or my past life that I had actually experienced. The person next to me on the pillow was sleeping soundly with a faint snore. I collected myself and pinched the soft flesh on his waist hard, with full force and no mercy. Sure enough, I heard a yelp. Seemed really painful. Woken up by my pinch, Marcus looked displeased for just a moment. He lowered his head and then looked up again, his face full of resentment, looking at me like a pitiful little dog. Honey, why did you pinch me? Anyone would be in a mood if suddenly woken up from a deep sleep, but he wasn't. Or rather, his emotions were hidden. So he wasn't normal. I reached a conclusion in an instant, so I deliberately pretended to be dazed. Huh. Did I pinch you? Look, it's red. Marcus turned on the light to show me. I raised my hand to block the blinding light, muttering, "Then I must have had a nightmare. Go back to sleep, we have to work tomorrow." Seeing this, Marcus didn't think much of it, thinking that I really had a nightmare. He turned off the light, rolled over and soon fell asleep again. As for me, I lay quietly beside him, awake all night. Sure enough, I had lived such a miserable and aggrieved life in my past life that even God couldn't bear to watch, so he sent me back to start anew. Well, in this life I need to think carefully about how to give those who hurt me a big gift. In my past life, when Olivia said I wasn't their biological child, I believed her. If I wasn't their biological child, it made sense that their attitude towards me took a nosedive after Olivia was born. If I wasn't their biological child, it was understandable that they persuaded me not to pursue the matter after I was rescued, saying that it would be bad for my reputation if I made a big fuss. If I wasn't their biological child, It was reasonable that they let Olivia snatch my fiancé because the Marcus family had already become prosperous by then, and Marcus was a good candidate for a husband. So all their partiality and neglect towards me over the past years became justifiable. However, if they weren't my parents, then where were my biological parents? Perhaps due to the lack of family affection in my past life, now that I was reincarnated, I wanted to try to find out information about my biological parents. Whether I could find them or not, it would be an answer to myself. Just do it. When I was at work during the day, I asked for leave, saying that I wasn't feeling well and needed to go to the hospital. Then I went alone to the blood sample collection point at the Public Security Bureau to collect my blood sample and information. To avoid attracting attention, I was fully armed. I changed into a set of clothes I had never worn before, put on a fisherman's hat, sunglasses and a mask, and even wore high heels. Because Marcus said I didn't look good in high heels, I usually didn't wear them. I only wore them occasionally when required for company meetings. With this outfit, Marcus probably wouldn't even recognize me if he stood in front of me. After collecting the blood samples, I found a public restroom to change my clothes. After that, I went back to the company to continue working. I heard you went to the hospital. Are you sick? The intern I was mentoring asked me in a whisper. I smiled at him and said, "It's nothing serious, just a minor ailment." The doctor prescribed some medicine. Although he was the intern I was mentoring, we didn't have much of a personal relationship because Marcus didn't like it. He was extremely jealous and couldn't accept me having any friends of the opposite sex. We had a huge fight over the issue of me mentoring a male intern. In the end, I placated him by saying that apart from work, I would have no other interactions with the intern. Till dawn there were many moments when I wanted to jump in and end it all in the. And I didn't jump, instead I saved a person from the water and got a huge opportunity. One could have ensured a worry-free life for myself in the future, but because of what Olivia said and being extremely struck, I handed this opportunity over to Maris. It helped the Marcus family take off, and the Marcus family and the Grace family became related by marriage, but I died with hatred and didn't have a good end. Not this time. This time I'll help you all achieve your wishes. On my way home from work, I was recalling the scene of saving that person back then and was preparing to save someone again, not for that opportunity but just to save a life. Maybe I was thinking too deeply and I accidentally bumped into someone. Ouch, I bumped into a middle-aged couple. Coming back to my senses, I quickly apologized. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Are you okay? The middle-aged man waved his hand and looked at me, his lips trembling but unable to speak. The woman next to him was the same, with red eyes and an expression of nervousness and concern that couldn't be hidden, so I tentatively asked, "Are you here to look for me?" This sentence was like a switch. The middle-aged couple immediately rushed forward and hugged me into their arms. Baby, mom is sorry. Mom has come to take you home." I was a bit nervous looking at the woman who was crying loudly while hugging me. They didn't even verify my identity and just hugged me and cried. Had I run into human traffickers? Fortunately, the middle-aged man reacted in time. He took out the printed comparison proof and found a nearby restaurant and dragged me there to talk in detail. During the conversation, the middle-aged woman that is my biological mother hugged me and cried a lot. The process was quite eventful and I won't go into details. Anyway, I successfully recognized my relatives. It was like a dream. I actually found my biological parents. Moreover, it wasn't that they didn't love me and deliberately abandoned me. They had been looking for me all these years. After chatting, they drove me back to my rented apartment. My father looked at the shabby neighborhood and wanted to say something but held back. He could hold back, but my mother couldn't. The tears that had just stopped flowing down again. "Baby, you've suffered so much these years. Tonight, come with mom and dad to the hotel first. Tomorrow we'll go look at houses." Me, yes. My biological parents are rich. I thought the Grace family was rich enough, but I didn't expect that my biological parents were much richer than them. My father said, "Don't we have several houses in the city? Although they're a bit small, they're better than this place. Tomorrow we'll ask the housekeeping service to clean up one for baby to live in first. We'll move again when the new house is renovated." No, that's not right. My mother's mind also caught up at this moment. Why should it be in the city? Baby should come back to our city with us. My father wholeheartedly agreed with this proposal. Of course, I'd be happy to go back to their city with them, but if I left now, how could I take revenge? After much persuasion, I managed to send them away. I went back to my small rented apartment alone. My head was still a bit dizzy. I couldn't believe that these were really my biological parents. Not only were they rich, but they also loved me so much. At this moment, I was the happiest person in the world. In the following Days I played along with Marcus on the surface while preparing my grand revenge plan. I saved that old man at the same time in the same place as I did in my previous life. It wasn't for his gratitude but simply to save his life. After sending him to the hospital and making sure he was okay, I left quietly. After a while, using the connections of my biological parents, I introduced a big business deal to Marcus. Just like in my previous life before the introduction, I made a request that we should get married. Marcus put his arm around me, being gentle and affectionate, and said of course my Grace deserves the best of everything. He was still waiting to get rich through me, so naturally he agreed to everything. However, he didn't know that in my previous life it was a real big business deal, but in this life, this big business deal was an abyss that would doom him to eternal damnation. It was a bottomless pit, one that neither the Marcus family nor the Grace family could fill even if they combined their resources. But in the early stage it seemed flawless. The business of the Marcus family was thriving and Marcus was looking more energetic day by day. When the parents of both sides met before the engagement, he and Olivia added each other on WeChat. I knew that it wouldn't be long before the two of them got involved with each other, so I installed hidden cameras at home and also hired a private detective. Sure enough, soon Marcus's attitude towards me changed. He was getting more and more impatient with me day by day and often didn't come home at night. Don't ask why, because the answer was always that he had social engagements. I didn't care. As long as the engagement banquet was held as planned, it was okay. Amid the various ulterior motives of everyone, the engagement banquet finally arrived. Needless to say, the Grace family, although they didn't value me much, still had to keep up appearances. The Marcus family was a rising star in this city and also attracted a lot of attention. While I liked a lively atmosphere too, the livelier the scene was, the happier I would be. So the engagement banquet was extremely lively, with a scale comparable to that of an ordinary family's wedding banquet. The most high-end 5-star hotel in the city, the top-notch banquet hall, hundreds of tables of guests, the highest standard. At this time Olivia wasn't so in love with Marcus that she had to marry him. Getting involved with him was just for fun and to spite me, so she didn't comment on the scale of the engagement banquet. I invited 7 or 8 tables of friends. Even Marcus was wondering where I got so many friends from. All of my friends were good-looking and had great figures. Yes, I paid a group of internet celebrities to be my friends. Why, of course, it was to publicize the live situation of the engagement banquet. In real time, after all the guests had arrived, Marcus's parents were sitting in the front row, grinning from ear to ear. They were quite satisfied with me. I had introduced business opportunities to them, and they could climb up the social ladder by getting connected with the Grace family through me. This daughter-in-law was worth marrying. My parents and Olivia were sitting on the other side while I was in the lounge. This was my suggestion. I said that the engagement banquet should also have a sense of ceremony, like a wedding. After the ceremony started, I would enter from the entrance of the banquet hall, walk to the stage, and Marcus would propose to me. Soon the ceremony began and the procedures went on one by one. Soon it came to the part that I had carefully designed. The recording devices of the internet celebrities were also already. Now let's invite our other protagonist today, the bride-to-be Grace, to enter, announced the host. Today did I realize that no matter how hard I tried, it was useless just because I wasn't your biological child. I was crying uncontrollably, vividly portraying a daughter who was devastated upon suddenly learning the truth. My adoptive father was even angrier seeing me like this. He broke through the security guard's blockade and rushed over. He slapped me twice again without showing any mercy. I was hit and fell to the ground, and my face immediately swelled up. My adoptive mother also rushed over, panting, "Immediately, right now, drive this dead girl out of the Grace family." So the two of them, under the witness of many relatives and friends, forced themselves to look resolute and announced categorically that they were cutting off all relations with me. They quickly signed the notarized document of severing relations. It was really something for Olivia to be able to get the severance statement so quickly. I pretended to be extremely reluctant. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, I was forced by them to sign and put my fingerprint on it. Actually, I was already laughing inside. After signing the severance document, the Grace family and the Marcus family politely asked the relatives and friends to leave one after another, dropping many hints in their words, intending to suppress the news. They didn't know that the group of friends I had invited had already live-streamed everything that happened at the engagement banquet, and by now, it had caused a huge stir on the internet. Having feasted on this fresh gossip and gained popularity online, the internet celebrities left satisfied. However, they didn't expect that one wave had barely subsided when another rose. A man and a woman who clearly looked like no ordinary people, walked in with a group of people, striding in with an imposing manner. This looked really bad now. No one wanted to leave anymore and stayed to watch the drama unfold. I was still covering my face and pretending to cry. The moment I saw my biological parents coming, I immediately felt extremely aggrieved, and the tears started pouring down as if they were free. My mother gave me a worried look and then quickly looked away. I knew she was afraid of giving the game away. After all, the play still had to go on. My adoptive father also had some knowledge of the world. When he saw my biological parents, he felt they looked familiar, but his emotions were in such turmoil that he couldn't recall where he had seen them for a moment. So he spoke respectfully. "I'm Alex from the Grace family in the city. May I ask what brings you here?" My father didn't want to pay any attention to him at all, but to go through the formalities he reluctantly said, "I'm here to find my biological daughter, the one you picked up." My adoptive father's whole body went rigid, and he slowly turned his head to look at me. "You're saying Grace is your daughter?" My father nodded. "Who the hell are you? You come up and say Grace is your daughter? She must have paid you to deceive us. She's clearly just a piece of trash and should be with the trash." Olivia was not happy and shouted, waving her arms around. My father suppressed his anger. He didn't want to argue with a little girl and lose his dignity. He only looked at my adoptive father. "If you've ever been to the city, you should know me. I'm Edward." Edward. The richest man in the city? My adoptive father staggered back 2 steps, feeling his legs go weak. He remembered he had seen Edward from a distance once at a dinner party, and the woman beside him was exactly his wife. At that dinner party, he heard people saying that Edward's daughter had been harmed by villains when she was very young, and there had been no news of her since. They had searched for a long time but couldn't find her, thinking that the little girl was already dead. Unexpectedly, the daughter he had raised for more than 20 years was actually Edward's biological daughter. My parents, who had finally gone through the formalities, didn't want to look at the people from the Grace family anymore. They came to my side and said gently, "Are you Grace? We are your mom and dad." Originally, they both still remembered their lines and were pretending that this was our first meeting. But when I looked up and they saw my swollen cheek, my biological father got angry. He forgot all about the lines and formalities. Usually a restrained and gentle man, he suddenly glared at Alex. What happened to her face? Alex hemmed and hawed for a long time but couldn't say a word. My father snorted and said to my mother, "Honey, let's take the child and leave first. Let little Goo and the others handle the rest." Although there was no threat in his words, everyone could see that he was very angry. After saying that, without looking at anyone else present, they each put an arm around me and walked out through the door of the banquet hall. Before leaving, I heard Olivia, who was still going crazy, screaming, "Who let her go? Who let her go? She made me suffer so much today. I'll make her pay with her life." Olivia was going crazy and making threats. Before my father could say anything, Alex couldn't hold it in anymore. As if finding an outlet for all the complicated emotions churning inside him, he suddenly turned around and slapped her, telling her to shut up. Unexpectedly, this slap made Olivia even crazier. This was the first time she had been hit since she was born. She had always had everything she wanted and had been adored by others. When had she ever suffered such humiliation as today? Now, even her father, who had always loved her the most, had slapped her. She was crying and shouting as she chased after me but was stopped by the hotel security guards. How the rest of the matter was handled had nothing to do with me. Of course, it had nothing to do with me on the surface,